Today's conversation is on a question that I get asked a lot, which is, when do I do? When do I not do? Is it better to do in this particular circumstance? Is it better not to do in this particular circumstance? I get asked these questions with respect to personal relationships and also business. And if you've been watching my videos for a while, I trust you probably would guess what I'm going to say. The one-word answer is flow. Going with the flow of life. This is what I would like to explore with you today. There is a concept called Wu Wei. It means a lot. We can say effortless action, the deliberate doing nothing for a reason at times. Listening to and honoring your intuition. Doing the right thing at the right time. All of this happens naturally, or as you may have heard me say many times, ideally, automatically, while we're in flow. Which is why I teach and recommend making flow a priority. So what do I mean by that? Making flow a priority. Well, I trust you've noticed that the answer to the question, should I do? What should I do? Should I not do? What should I not do? In whatever particular circumstance with respect to business and relationships, arises naturally while you are in flow, while you are being as you are. Natural way of being, authentic way of being. I trust you've noticed this. In 2017, I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I'm actually heading out for some travel today. I'm going to Los Angeles. As you may know, Danielle Lynn and I are doing a workshop on flow. And the event is sold out in person. You can still catch it on live stream if you're interested. I'll link in the description to it. So, I was in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and I did an inventory of my life, and I asked myself, when was I the happiest? When was I the most productive in business? When was I naturally being as I am in relationships, friendships, dating life, romantic relationships, business relationships, family? When did I know clearly what to do? When not to do? And also, when did these actions flow effortlessly? Which includes, for example, if we look at relationships, when to take a step, when not to take a step. It was while I was in flow. So what I did was I made flow a priority. And that is the essence of my teaching. Make flow a priority, which means be as you are. And as I remain as I am, everything flows naturally, authentically, and automatically. What I mean by that, what I do, what I don't do, what the world appears to do or not do, appears to be in harmony, inner and outer in harmony. So let's talk about 7 practical ways to be as we are, remain in our flow, access the flow, which is now, abide as we are in the flow, and remain in our flow, thus making flow a priority. Number 1, let go of excessive control. Excessive control. Practical example would be a person is interested in reaching out to a prospect in business. There's a particular person that they are interested in doing business with. They have an intuitive insight to reach out to this person. So they sent them an email. Asked them if they would be interested in jumping on a Zoom meeting to get to know each other. Perhaps there are ways that they can work with each other. And so that's what they put in the email. Perhaps there's some ways we could work together. I do this, you do this. There may be some connections. As you can see via the email, that there's space. They're not trying to control the other person, force the other person, strong arm the other person, control or manipulate the other person. Rather, they're interested in an exploratory conversation. There is a particular desired outcome. Yet, there is no excessive control in the email. Now, let's say the person reaches out, maybe in a day or two. They jump on a Zoom call and the conversation continues, flow-based. Now, let's say the person does not reach out in 1 or 2 days. Perhaps the individual that is reaching out to this person now might start to get controlling. They think of ways that are not authentic, because if they checked in with themselves, they will see it's not flow-based, to try to convince this person to jump on a Zoom call. If they allow for space, if they clearly during that space discern that that is not an authentic thing to do, they won't do that thing. Now, they may come up with another idea which feels authentic. It may be, you know what? Let's go for a little drive. I've done this a number of times, so I'm speaking from experience. Let's head over to their office and see if they're around. Maybe they want to go for lunch. I've done this. And it works. Now, a person may think, well, I should do that. I should, instead of following up with email or coming up with a way to convince them, I should do what Joseph did. which is go over to their office and ask them if they're interested in going out for lunch. And to that I say the answer is it depends. Why do I say that? Well, point number 2, cultivating spontaneity. Spontaneity. These ideas of what to do naturally arise as I remain in my flow, as I release the need to control. As you can see, I still end up doing something, and it works out. Yet I might not necessarily always do that. That is something that I might do. Sometimes, if let's say that need to control arises in mind, and we don't identify with it, they end up contacting us back. I've seen it happen the same day or a few days later. It happened, we could say, by doing nothing. So one way it happened by doing something, and one way it happened by doing nothing. Which way is better? Well, consider this. To remain in my flow, I remove the bias of one way being better than another. That way I don't force myself to do something because I think that that is the thing that I should do. And I also don't force myself to do nothing because I think that that's the thing that I should do. I allow for spontaneous creativity to arise. And it could be an idea that I've never done before. I have at times actually booked a flight to show up on client sites. I have actually at times had an idea to attend a particular social event that they were going to be at so we could connect. And even when I do that, I remain in the flow. Because let's say if I do go to that event and they're there, we end up talking, and they say, well, I'm not interested in doing the deal right now. That's fine. I still remain in my flow. Which brings me to point number 3, flow with change. You see, environments may appear to change. Speaking of which, look at all the leaves on the grass. It's fall. Soon it's going to be winter, and we're going to be doing these videos in the snow sometimes. Now, people may also appear to change. Environments may appear to change. Circumstances may appear to change. Yet you remain as you are, as unconditional love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment. Thus, you are not swayed by appearances. If the individual identifies with old man thinking, which is thinking in terms of separation from love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, and thus needing the other person to say this or do that or something like that in order to validate love, happiness, peace, bliss, fulfillment, then that could result in a flow restrictor. So we embrace change. As a matter of fact, that is one of the things that I deliberately do. I place myself in situations where I get to practice this. Chaotic environments, chaotic situations, for a reason to practice this. For example, in 2009, when I left my corporate career to start my IT business, that was what I would call a controlled chaos. So I had some ideas, I had some plans. Yet, I found that when I implemented those plans, through the optimization data that showed up, for example, if I pull up the Robert Dilts logical levels with respect to environments, with respect to capabilities, with respect to behaviors, optimization data showed up where I could optimize these areas. As I optimized these areas, I found that it went outside of plan, may have gone at times in unconventional directions. And I also found that some of the plans, I followed them step by step and they worked out. So it's interesting. I'm open to, I don't say one way is better than another. If I have a plan and I follow the plan and it works out, great. If I start following the plan and there are opportunities to pivot and optimize, great. I remain in my flow, optimize accordingly, and it works out. Not in accordance with that plan, but in some variation of the plan. Or sometimes I have no plan. That's fine as well. Which way is better? I don't consider one way better than another. Do you see the key distinction here? Removing the bias, removing the, or as I say sometimes, releasing identification to the bias-based beliefs, confirmation bias, which then allows for the next point, trusting your intuition. As I mentioned, I listen exclusively to my intuition. I don't listen to the mental chatter, which arises in mind, if it arises in mind, which belongs to the old man. I do what is called living meditation, which is essentially being as I am. And then it appears as me going with the flow of life, as, let's say, if old man thinking arises in mind, I can clearly see that it's old man thinking, and I don't identify with it. And beyond that mental chatter is intuition, which provides me with vivid clarity the move to make. And we could say on the surface, that move might not make any logical sense. I've done a lot of things in my IT business, for example, that didn't make any logical sense. Like, for example, I started teaching speed reading workshops. Some might think, what's the point of that? What does that have to do with building an IT business? I was part of some business masterminds, and they would say, don't do that. Focus on sales for your IT business. But that didn't feel right. So I listened to my intuition. I taught those workshops. Not only did I cultivate my public speaking skills and my sales skills, that added a revenue stream as well. And Paul, the founder of Iris Reading, and I have done a number of business deals since then, which has then generated multiple streams of income. I also acquired IT clients by teaching those workshops because managers, business owners would attend those workshops. I would talk about how I was running an IT business once in a while in the workshop, and they would come up to me at the end and they'd say, can you help us put in some technology? And I said, yes. So we see that it could be looked at as very unconventional. I know a number of people that actually generate leads for their business by doing things like that. They go to particular environments, they partake in particular activities that if a person was stuck in their head, they wouldn't see how that actually leads to acquiring clients. I trust you know what I'm talking about. Which leads me to my next point. Releasing the need for perfectionism. So I value nuance, yet I release perfectionism identification, we could say. What I mean by that is there are infinity ways of doing things. The flow-based way is listening to yourself, trusting yourself, allowing things to happen naturally, tuning into yourself and doing what feels right. And at times, as mentioned, what felt right for me was to place myself in controlled chaos situations. By placing myself in controlled chaos situations, I actually found the flow there. So one could say I found order in chaos. Now, as a result of doing that, and also being a consultant for many years, after I transitioned from my IT business, I got into consulting and worked with thousands of businesses over the years. And I found many ways to optimize marketing, optimize sales, optimize operations, some of which I did myself in my IT business, and then 10 years prior to that in my corporate career. There are infinity ways. Let's use relationships as an example. Let's say you have an intention of being in a harmonious relationship. You see someone that you're interested in talking to, you go up to them, you have a conversation with them, you get a date with them, and you may have some preconceived notions of what that relationship should play out as a result of that identification to control, manifest behaviors that are controlling, thinking patterns that are controlling, emotional reactivity in relation to what a person says, does, etc., rather than being as you are. See, what the individual is doing is identifying with perfectionism, as in it needs to go this way in order for them to be happy. If it doesn't go that way, then they did something wrong, the other person did something wrong, there's something wrong with them, there's something wrong with the other person, which is completely illusory thinking. What I recommend is allowing yourself to enjoy the experience. And then after the experience, you can choose where that relationship goes. Maybe you would like to go on a date with them again, maybe not. Each way is totally fine. Maybe you might discover, actually, as you release the need to control, they might invite you to do something you've never done before. They might say, have you tried salsa before? Salsa dancing. And you might say, you know what? I never tried that before. But because you have released the need, which is not you really thinking, that's old man thinking, then you try it out. The next date, you go to a salsa club. You try it out. You've never done it before. They teach you a few moves. You have a wonderful time. And now you have this commonality. Next thing you know, maybe once a week, you're going out to a salsa club with them. You're learning how to salsa. And let's say if you're an artist, you may notice that all of a sudden now, you're infusing the inspiration you get from learning how to salsa into your art or creative expression. Because the need for perfectionism has been released, as in, if it doesn't meet this particular standard, then you're not good enough, or it's not perfect. Rather, there's so many ways that a relationship could play out harmoniously. Rather than trying to control it, allow some space for new ways to arise. Fluidity of mind. And the way we practice this is in the next point here. Being present here now. Being as you are here now. See, as I remain as I am now, I am aware of what I think, what I emotionally relate to people, environment, circumstance, information. You are aware of what you think of, what you emotionally relate to people, environment, circumstance, information, and behave. Behaviors reveal, emotions reveal, thinking reveals if it's authentic or if it belongs to what the Bible refers to as the old man thinking. Practically speaking, if my behaviors are that of force or control, I release it in the moment. I release that identification. I accept myself the way I am now. Even if the behaviors, let's say, appear as a little bit tense, I accept myself the way I am. It's fine. It's okay that I feel tense. and tension is released. By being present, we are aware of thoughts that appear in mind, and we could choose to not identify with old man thinking if it appears in mind. We can feel the emotions being released rather than suppressing or repressing them. And as we do this, we remain in our flow. And then, going back to the beginning, what to do, what not to do, when to do, when not to do, doing, not doing, is obvious in the moment. And I trust you find as well, it happens automatically, naturally. This reminds me of the book, The Unfettered Mind by Takwon Soho. He says, "It is not the man but the sword in the hand of the man's subconscious that strikes." And so one of the ways that I find to get into the flow is to entertain the path of least resistance. See, a person may believe that force-based, stress-based, frustrating-based is the way. Controlling-based, overthinking-based, perfectionism-based is the way. As we have been discussing, that's illusory thinking that belongs to the old man, which is not you really thinking. So what I do is, let's say if I wasn't in the flow, I ask myself the question, what feels authentic? It could be start a conversation with a prospect. It could be make a video. These are my path of least resistance activities. So some of my friends are into art therapy. They notice that when they do their art, resistance feels like it's draining from the body. Maybe in the first minute or so, first few minutes, it doesn't feel like that because there's still old man thinking identification going on in mind, tension in the body, and emotions being released. So it's helpful then to consider that it is not because of the activity. It is identification that is generating the illusion of resistance in relation to that activity. Now, as they perform that activity, old man thinking is released, emotions regulate, behaviors flow. And what I've done over the years is engage in more of these kinds of activities. And then as a result of doing it, I find that all of these things that we talk about make sense. And then we know what to do, what not to do, what to say, what not to say, when not to say, when to do, when not to do. Why, in relation to that last point, I found is because we can feel if we are in our flow or not. We can feel it. And if I appear not to be in my flow, I know that that's illusory, as in the natural way of being is flow. So then I know what to do and what not to do, which can include some of the things we've talked about in this video, and then I'm aligned with the flow. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. You can say, remaining as I am, it is crystal clear what I relate to, what appears. As I remain as I am, body naturally flows. Clarity naturally arises. As I prioritize being as I am, I remain in my flow, honoring my flow, to do what I authentically desire to do. As I allow myself to do what I authentically desire to do, mind is purified from the illusions of resistance, to remain as I am.